Hey, everybody.
Hey. We're live in beautiful Salt Lake City.
It's Thank God I'm Atheist.
The podcast.
I'm Frank.
And I'm Chris, filling in for Dan, who is traveling the world this week.
As he's prone to do. Well, coming up on today's episode, we have an interview with Christopher Johnson about his upcoming book, A Better Life, 100 Atheists Speak Out, on joy and meaning in a world without God. So that'll be coming up later. In the meantime, we should kind of get to know this new guest host, a dear friend of mine, Chris.
Long-time listener, first-time guest hoster. By the way, that's a jazzy little fizzle.
Isn't that good?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, we love our intro music on TGIA. Well, Chris, tell us, just so the listeners all know who you are and kind of your worldview. And to be clear, this is not the Chris who wrote a book.
No.
This is something I've known for years. It just occurred to me that might be confusing. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us who you are. Tell us maybe, are you an atheist, Chris?
Ooh, you're asking me to come out of the closet?
Yes.
Well, I'm not.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay, that might be a problem for our podcast.
Well, let me explain.
Okay.
Fine podcast listeners. I would describe myself as probably a medium strong agnostic.
Okay. So what does that mean for you, though? Like,
well,
how does that work in sort of your real world view of like?
In my real world view of the cosmos is I do not believe in a personal God.
Okay.
I do not believe in a magic man who watches me masturbate.
Right. Okay.
Cloud front seat.
Ew. Okay, good. You don't believe in a kinky God.
No.
Okay.
But I believe in I was kind of saying to you that I believe that it's not even something that anyone can know. It's almost beyond even it's beyond even any comprehension. Right. If you were to acknowledge that our understanding of the cosmos is, if anything is true of what we do know about like dark matter and things like that, basically science is telling us that we know barely. It's generous to suggest we know 10% about the universe.
Sure.
So there's
slowly our understanding will increase through the centuries and hopefully millennia more of human existence, right?
Right.
It's more that like, so for you, it's almost a deist sort of perception
it's kind of
the universe, where it's like God is on there's this unexplainable mystery that's on the fringes, and we keep pushing that fringe back further and further, and the space for
but
that
also
mystery, which could be some kind of whatever, who knows what it is,
right,
keeps getting smaller.
Well, and in a way, we even open up more mysteries as we open, push that back.
True.
We open up more. And, there was a philosopher, writer named Sam Keen, and the way he described it, I don't know if he was the one who coined this term, but he said it's an unnamed and an unknowable God, or it was unknown and unknowable. Something to that effect, that it's not even worth debating whether or not this personal God exists.
Well, it almost seems like, to me, though, like hearing people talk about this unknowable God who is completely disconnected from any kind of like knowability or desire to be known or whatever, right? Like, it's just this thing it leaves me just going, well, why spend even a moment of time thinking about that God? Or even the possibility of that God, right? Like, it's like, and because like, yeah, I'm like, okay, well, you are correct. We don't know what's out beyond that, wherever that line is of known universe and unknown universe, right? I care that the line keeps getting pushed back and that we end up knowing more and more and more. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't like try to discover mystery.
Oh no, I'm all for that. But by the same time,
I don't have a need to fill that mystery with anything other than it could be known someday.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
So,
Well, and it's, I mean, it's tricky because, our friend Dan has probably said
of the podcast,
he has said, I mean, he's kind of taken a critical stance of agnosticism in the past.
Well, I think his thing is that we're all agnostic. If we were all being truly honest, I think I remember that being kind of his stance.
Well, and
I mean, we did find something on the blog where
yeah.
he said something totally different.
Right, but that was several years ago.
No, I think his stance is very much that. I think that's what he said.
So what I take exception to is, I guess, there's the concepts of strong atheism and weak atheism, and it's the strong atheism is the one that I take the most exception to, because it's, it's basically fanatical fundamentalist atheism, in the sense that if you believe in a magic man in the clouds, then, I'm going to mock that belief. And it's tricky.
I'm fine mocking the belief.
Well, yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, it's fun to just, poke fun, but it's one thing if you hold those beliefs and they don't, they don't affect other people. It's another thing when you're in a position of power and you're going to, make somebody's life miserable because of your belief in a magic man. And so, but the thing I find the most ironic is that, the strong atheists they're basically attacking people for a literal interpretation of scriptures, for example, when, the scriptures themselves are metaphors for, a dimension of life that is not easily interpretable or easily describable, myths and so forth, that are describing ourselves, like the myth of Jesus is the myth of ourselves. Everyone has that potential and the capacity to
die for the sins of the world.
Well, to die to your former self, somebody who didn't care about other people, who didn't care about the world, and has for reasons has had a transcendent experience that cannot be explained in language or regular experience, and then suddenly finds themselves motivated and directed in a new way that they would never have explained before, but it's not religious in any sense.
It actually opens up something that I didn't quite expect from you. This willingness to find meaning in biblical stories.
Well, so here's an interesting thing.
But you don't find it in, I mean, they're not literal for you.
No, not
stories.
No, not at all.
They're just stories that have been passed down. And if you can find something in them, then great.
Absolutely.
And if you can't,
because
we're going to be talking about some bad Bible stories.
Yes, right.
In the second half of the show.
Well, and the funny thing about the Bible is that if you were to take a very analytical, anthropological view of it and back it up with evidence, even the archaeological records basically say that Exodus didn't happen. It was just a propaganda story to make people feel good.
Right.
But if you were to take a very scholarly look at the Bible and accept that it's not, it's written by hundreds of people, of oral accounts that were written down hundreds or thousands of years after they supposedly happened, some of which are historically documented events, and others are pure metaphor.
Right. Right.
And then there's the craziness.
Don't you think, though, that modern life and science and what we know about the universe and life has, again, if we're talking about pushing things to the fringe, doesn't it seem like that a lot of what the Bible is trying to address in our lives, understanding of where we come from and explanations of Genesis, right? Where does life even begin, right? The fringe has been pushed back to reveal that those little bits of the Bible we're addressing something that doesn't need to be addressed anymore. And so to try to find meaning in something in the crumbs that are left, right, seems to be, to me, just a pointless exercise almost,
Well, yeah.
It just seems to I get this, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of, I don't think I'm expressing myself terribly well, but it just feels to me that it's an effort to create meaning out of a story that was meant to be fairly literal at one point.
Well, here's one thing. Here's a thing I think is worth dispelling, and that is that these myths, no one has ever met the author of any of these stories, because I guarantee you these grew out of the psyche of thousands of people who lived over thousands of years.
Right.
And the stories, like the details are different. I mean, look at Santa Claus, for example. Santa Claus is fascinating because if you were actually to, trace the roots back, just on a cursory level, you could say, oh, well, it's, Saint Nicholas.
Uh-huh.
But like even the colors of his outfit, the red and the white, go back even further to paganism and the black forests of Northern Europe, where there's these crazy mushrooms, like, Disney, like in a Disney movie, like these giant mushrooms that are like truly bright candy red and white, and the pagans used to like eat them and have crazy psychedelic visions.
See reindeer flying through the sky.
Yes, yeah. And so it's funny that like Santa Claus today has been appropriated by the Coca-Cola Corporation to be this like
and polar bears,
the unofficial spokesperson, and yet the imagery is kind of like this hodgepodge collection of thousands of years of human experience and knowledge and so forth. So, we could obviously talk about this like the whole podcast, but in essence,
we don't have time
which we don't have time, unfortunately. But the point is that I take a view that, there is a perennial truth, and or a kind of a singular truth, and that and humans will be lucky if you can find the outlines, like the image of a blind person kind of feeling an elephant, and they're like, what is this truth that I have my hands on, and it could feel different depending on what part.
One person feels a tree, one person feels a snake, one person feels a wall. I can't remember what all of trying to imagine.
So my personal experience is that I'm open to knowledge, and I'm open to, I'm a seeker of knowledge, and I don't take these stories literally, and I assume that there is a seed of truth in every single one of them, and that's been a huge shift for me personally, because
a truth about the human situation,
the human experience,
is what you're talking about,
absolutely. Right. Which no one can deny. I mean, that's, everyone's experiencing some part of it, some facet of it. It's really rich, and it's really, multifaceted. And in my experience, I think a lot of friends that I know that, were raised in a kind of an oppressive religious environment,
like so many of us in Salt Lake.
So many of us, yeah. I think a lot of this is a kind of a rebellion against and an emancipation from that oppressive religion.
Okay.
And so, for example, it's just kind of that immediate knee jerk, like, ew, the Bible, which, by the way, I totally get, because like I had to wake up, for years at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Talk about that a little bit.
Bible.
You did grow up Mormon.
I did.
Just to kind of finish up this introduction of you. You grew up Mormon, a pretty serious Mormon household.
Yeah, not crazy. Like, I have siblings who they've even taken it to more extreme levels. But
we were talking about that before we started recording. Just kind of
not turbo Mormon, but committed Mormon.
I would say very committed.
Yeah. Okay.
It seems very committed.
Sure.
From my perspective, I've only met your mom actually, just briefly. One time. I've never met your dad.
My dad's he's an interesting guy. He wanted to be a scientist, and he ended up becoming a lawyer. And then he's a pretty pragmatic guy. And I actually harbor my own doubts about whether he believes in the literal interpretation of a lot of this stuff.
And yet he was somebody who was called repeatedly in his life to leadership positions in the church. And so it's like, that's interesting that you would have that perspective of him. That he did it for sort of the social, is what you have, sort of it's what was expected of him in a lot of ways.
There was a lot of expectation coming from a lot of different places, and I think he did it again. I think it's his pragmatism, that it was something that was culturally advantageous. Because if you got on well, and it's also a generational thing, like if you got on well in that arena, and you kind of toted that line, then your life would generally be easier.
Huh.
I mean, it's a little speculation, but it's a feeling I continually get, and namely because, when push comes to shove, he has all kinds of not so favorable things to say about the Mormon Church. When you get him in a good mood, and you get him, or in a bad mood, and you get him, and he's
when you get him drunk.
When you get him drunk on post,
which I'm sure is
but otherwise, when he feels comfortable, he will kind of be very candid. And unlike my mom, who you get her comfortable, and she'll reveal that she's waiting for Jesus to come back any day.
Right. And so the environmental degradation of this planet that we live on
is
hastening
his
return.
Yes.
And so therefore, why fight it?
Right.
Yeah. That's my mom. I'm serious.
No, I believe it. I know.
She's just like, well, why should we care? It's one of the signs of the times.
Right.
It's not like we're going to stop it.
Yeah, it's like you're moving out of this house in a week. You don't need to care about...
All right. Well, why don't we get on to some stories? Some stuff from the news this week. This is just because he was Time's Person of the Year. I felt that it was finally important for us to talk a little bit about Pope Francis. Not the fact that he was, kind of indirectly that, linked to his being the Person of the Year.
It's Pope Frenzy.
There's a lot of Pope Frenzy right now. Pope Francis Frenzy. He's an interesting guy, and what I wanted to bring up about him was that there was a story that popped up about how he went off script during midnight mass. Wait, did I get that right? Yes, I think so. Yeah, because that's when he gives his Urbi et Orbi, right? Christmas address. And he sort of reached out a little bit once again, because it's not the first time that he's mentioned atheists, but he's invited atheists in his Urbi et Orbi Christmas address to join. Where was the line? To basically join with believers in working for good in the world. Mm-hmm. Because he recognizes that atheists and agnostics, you can be included in this, Chris.
Oh, good.
Can be people of
good
high
intentions.
morals and good intentions and so forth and so on. You took the words right out of my mouth.
Shocking. I thought you had to have a belief in Jesus to have good morals.
No, apparently. I mean, he even says that atheists, this was one of the first crazy atheist things that he said, is that atheists will probably make it to heaven.
What?
Yeah, that they're not just automatically damned.
Oh, thank God.
Not even purgatory, right? Like,
what a relief.
I was expecting, spend next who knows how long after I die
playing the same Keno game in Reno, Nevada over and over and over again.
That is purgatory. And you just can't get the numbers right.
Game 666 of Keno.
Why can't I predict the numbers? They're the same every time. It's like a dream where you're trying to flip the switch on and off.
Yeah.
The lights won't turn off. Why can't I read the clock? Everything I know about dreaming comes from waking life.
Oh,
actually. Yeah. I have no original ideas about dreams. They're all references to waking life. But isn't that crazy? This Pope,
this line's great. Jesus came into the world filled with believers and unbelievers, and the Pope lives in that same world.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's basically saying Jesus created unbelievers.
Well,
and created the Pope.
If you believe that he created everything.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, the same Jesus who created non-believers created the Pope. I think he'd accept that statement as truth. But yeah, and tied into this is just also some recent polling numbers about how popular the Pope is right now in the United States, with something like 88% of American Catholics approving of how Francis is handling his role as the Pope.
How about non-Catholics?
Non-Catholics in this country, 3 out of 4 approve. And atheist numbers, I don't think it specifically This article didn't specifically have atheist numbers, but there's a lot of anecdotal crap about approval of the Pope. I would say, yeah, I think he's doing an awesome job. I mean, with some caveats, he's still Catholic.
He's still the Pope.
He's still the Pope of.
But he hung out with homeless people on his birthday.
You have to approve of that. Have
Certainly
you
not
seen
frown on that.
the picture of him embracing the man who's covered in boils?
No, I have not.
It is like I stared at the photo for a minute and it deeply moved me.
Wow.
And it moved me because I started thinking about this man who most people recoil from, right? Like, if he's out in public, guaranteed the way that how disfigured he was. If you see that man in the supermarket, you're going to glance and look away. And you're going to tell little kids not to stare, right? Like, that's the scenario. And instead, the Pope looked him in the eyes and embraced him.
Wow.
And so my thought was, here's this man, here's this leader of 1.2 billion people who is embracing him. And that touched me.
Oh,
it really did.
Sounds, very moving.
Yeah. The power that would have on your life, on because he's clearly was a believer. That's why he sought out the Pope. And so the power of that gesture of that and knowing how to embrace somebody and how to look somebody in the face who, is disfigured. I mean, this man has a lot of experience. Francis has a ton of experience, clearly working with the poor and the sick and so forth and so on, and he cares. He seems to truly care. And it's brilliant. He's shifted the entire dialogue about the Catholic Church. Who's talking about, pedophile priests?
Oh, well, that too.
Right?
Right. When they weren't talking about pedophilia, they were talking about gay marriage and contraception and none of that matters to this Pope.
It's all, so the dialogue about Catholicism and in the Pope's mind, Christ's message has been shifted,
which is
highly effective Pope.
Yes. And refreshing, I would say.
5 highly effective habits of highly
popery.
effective popes.
Of effective popery.
Well, he knows.
Well, it actually makes you, as a non-theist, as a non-theist, as a humanist, it makes it, you take a step back and you realize this is the role that religion can have in the world.
Right.
If you get off of the divisive wedge issues and you talk about, how can we help the poor, the needy, the sick, the disenfranchised, create more justice and equality in the world, like that, in my mind, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's like, does one even need to say that? And yet it seems like that's a revolutionary act in this world.
I know. Did you listen to the episode when we had Peter Boghossian?
I don't know.
He argued that, and I thought that it was a really, just to do a little counterpoint to what you just said, for him, any faulty epistemology, right? Any time that you've arrived to a truth through faulty means, it's a problem, right? Because for him, it means that you're learning
bad logic,
and bad thinking skills, right? You're not thinking in a good way, and the problem with religion is it does allow so many people to think so poorly.
It's magical thinking,
yeah, and. So, I mean, you're right that it's what religion should be, but in a world where there should be religion, right?
Right.
And I just think that, I think it's amazing to have a world leader who
leads that many people,
who is being as good of an example as he is. In the world that we live in, I think he's an incredibly powerful and important figure. And do I wish that his institution didn't need to exist?
Disbanded itself?
Yeah.
Well,
So-
but in the idea of a kind of a secular morality and even a scientifically demonstrated morality, where you could say, look, I mean, like for example, I don't know if you saw this headline, but Utah is set to get rid of homelessness by 2015 because they figured,
What?
yeah.
This doesn't sound possible in such a conservative
It
state.
doesn't, but there's a lot of things that don't sound possible that have happened in the most conservative state. Well, so what they've figured out is that it's cheaper, and this is, again, the logic is just, when logic wins, it's so refreshing because it's like, there's sanity in an insane world. The logic was it costs us less money to just give a homeless person an apartment. No questions asked, no strings.
Housing first.
Housing first, and then because otherwise the cost of emergency room visits and police, you got to pay for increased police coverage. But instead, like, we're going to respect that a human being, has a minimum level of needs, and that if those needs aren't met, they're going to be causing trouble for the whole society.
I haven't read this article, but I like that approach of here's housing, here's just a place to stay.
It's a universal need, like
and
everyone
it's
needs
a basic human need. And in a place like Utah where it gets so cold in the winter, shelter should be a basic right that's guaranteed by the state. That's fantastic. Wow, I did not know that. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, do you have a story? Do you have anything you want to share?
Well, there's the big one.
What's the big one?
Well, at least in this country, it seems like the big news story this week, and I know you guys touched a little bit about it last week, but it's they got the gay marriage in the Utah now, which
it's remarkable.
some people said they didn't think they would live to see that day.
It was way out of my mind.
Yeah.
I think that I figured I would live to see the day because I figured that in the United States it would just eventually just nationally be decreed,
and it would trickle
all
down
remaining
to
states must allow marriage equality,
and Utah would be the last one.
It would be at least in the group of the last ones, right? And I never thought that it would just be. I didn't see this playing out, that a federal judge would just declare and decree that Utah's laws that were on part of our Constitution were null and void, and that they were in conflict with the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. So
you didn't?
I didn't see that coming. No,
really.
I mean, I knew that there was a case, and I guess I just didn't know who the judge was, and I didn't know enough details. And I knew that there was a decision that was going to be handed down. I heard at the beginning of the year. Definitely the timing caught me off guard.
Yeah.
And the nature of the finding and how definitive it was and how incredibly clear it was.
Yes. It was
that caught me off guard.
Yeah, well, and when he described his reasoning, he said he could find no reasonable, rational reason for it, and he could also find no reason to wait.
Right.
That this was just like,
it should just be now.
Let's just be now.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of very, very happy gay people having a very happy, even non-secular, probably atheists who got in the Christmas spirit.
It was a happy Christmas here in Utah.
It was.
It really was. So there were some interesting facts about this.
So same-sex couples shatter marriage records in Utah.
Yeah.
And the counties are finding that they're making money on these licenses. Because apparently, who knew? The gays also want to get married, and there's money to be made.
There's money to be made. I read an article about a jeweler that is very close to the county offices here in Salt Lake, who was making a ton of money with people buying last-minute rings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I bet. Nice.
And the jeweler was like, well, we've always been welcoming of our gay and lesbian customers. He's like, so Yeah, this makes it all the sweeter, basically.
It's awesome. So here it says, Salt Lake County shattered a previously held record of 85 marriages in a given day by handing out 353 marriage licenses on Monday alone.
Well, I heard that there were. It's a fairly large building. I mean, you know the county building
complex,
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a government building. Tons of hallways, just meandering all around the building. Apparently, the hallways were just full, both levels of the building.
Did you see the photos
with the line serpentining through the building?
Yes.
Just crazy.
Did you see the photos of the Boy Scouts handing out pizza to
amazing.
the people waiting in line?
Yeah, and there were tons of stories like that. There was apparently a Mormon group that was showing up with, was it water or beverages of some kind? I think that's how it was or how it went with for the people in line.
Refreshments
is
what they call it.
Yes, thank you, Chris.
Well, the Mormons.
Yeah. Some Kool-Aid.
Yes.
Some red punch, which is actually banned.
What?
You know that, right?
I did not.
Red punch is banned from church buildings.
Why?
Because it stains the carpet.
Oh, okay. I thought it would be more crazy than that.
No, they just have this rule against red punch. You can't have red punch. People show up with red punch, and the bishop's always like, "Now we'll let it get by this time, but we don't really allow red punch in the building."
It's a sad day.
Decreed from Salt Lake, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's just how they work. They've got rules.
There are rules. There are rules, people. And if there aren't rules, there will be chaos, as I think the governor of Utah
red
said.
Stains everywhere.
The governor was very concerned that there was chaos.
Chaos that he was creating.
Well, and chaos that he didn't like.
Chaos that he didn't like.
Of.
I mean, the chaos was people orderly lining up to get marriage
married. Yes.
That
were previously denied by the state
right. So
doing so.
So there was a run on the counties for licenses.
Because they thought they were going to take it away.
Right, exactly.
If the governor himself, and now here's an interesting theory, the governor himself said, "We aren't going to challenge this. Take your time. You can get married at your own leisure. Plan that great gay wedding that you really have always wanted." People would be like, "Oh yeah, we'll do it next week."
That would end the chaos.
That would end the chaos immediately.
Yeah.
But Governor Gary Herbert is not interested in ending the chaos.
He's a chaotic man. I'm sure he's not, though. That's the thing. He seems like a very boring man to me. Governor Herbert. Do you know how mad I am at somebody who I really like? That Huntsman. Huntsman gave us Herbert.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
He was his lieutenant governor.
He abandoned us when we needed him the most.
I know. I loved Huntsman. Ugh. Anyways. All right. Well, I have a story about. Do you have
well, I was going to
else?
say, did you want to talk about? You mentioned maybe even kind of discussing personal feelings. I don't know if that
about gay marriage.
Well, about the ruling, about
Well, I mean, if you have any, feel free.
Okay.
I personally I've had some interesting thoughts about it. I was, so let's see, we recorded last podcast on last Saturday. And so I really had probably less than 24 hours to really sit and think about it. But sometime over the weekend, I had this strange realization because I was feeling very elated, right? I was very happy. And all of a sudden I realized that the emotion wasn't just happiness, that there was something that I was no longer feeling. And I think I have identified what oppression feels like because it was lifted. Whoa. I didn't know what it felt like, right, until it was no longer there. Does that make any sense? Like, it was just something that I had lived with. And it was this really strange moment of like, I live in a society that considers me equal now. Or I at least live in a system, in a regime that considers me equal. Maybe not the society, but like, and I didn't even realize how much power that would have.
Interesting.
Of just on my psyche.
Huh.
It was really, really strange moment of just like, I feel a little different now.
Oh.
I don't like those kind of feelings and thoughts very much.
Right.
I like to just live my life. But yeah, I mean, what did you think, Chris? Did you have any realizations about life and humanity, your place in the universe?
Well, I felt that this was, I kind of like you, it took a while to sink in, and just kind of following all the stories and following the Twitter updates, and a couple of things that was really interesting. I mean, I know the media was really focused on it, for the first couple of days, and then I remember, the local news was continuing to talk about it and still is.
Right.
But I remember on like Monday or Tuesday going to like the national media sites, and you couldn't find the story anywhere.
Yeah.
It was almost kind of like a novelty story, like, the wacky news, in other news. I don't think that a lot of other people in the rest of the country understand how truly tectonic this decision is.
Yeah.
Mainly because Utah still has this mystique about it, and a lot of people are like, Utah, is that thing still around? Like they just don't understand how interesting it is. Like, for example, people don't realize how big of a gay population there is in the state and Salt Lake specifically.
Salt Lake. Oh my God!
But even in Utah County, like the most Republican state county in the entire country.
Probably.
I think
it would be a contender.
It was a contender. I know at least in the 2004 election it was like 95% went to Republican voting or something. God. But there's gay people down there, and there's there's a gay support group on the campus of BYU, but I think that like the fact that a Utah or federal judge in Utah made this ruling. And it came from Utah, and this is, some people are speculating this is the final dominoes, are going to fall, because other states are going to say, well, if they did it there, then we're going to do it here.
Right.
And, something I didn't know that came out of this is that apparently Utah, when they passed the, what amendment was it that legalized alcohol in the United States?
Yeah.
Utah was the deciding state legislature to vote for that constitutional
for the
amendment.
End of prohibition.
They gave it that 3/4, which there's two ways to look at it. They were the last ones to vote,
right?
But they were also the deciding vote, which is really amazing.
Yeah.
But in this case, like, I think in 50 years or so, that when we look back and the textbooks are going to be written, they're going to say this was that moment. That this is, which is, in a way, like, personally, because I live in this country, it's remarkable. But then, of course, I have to remind myself that the rest of the world is looking at us going, why are you taking so long to decide this?
Well, I wouldn't say the rest of the world.
Well, the rest of the Western world.
But even then, there are plenty of places in Europe that haven't decided yet, or are just still not. Like Italy. Not that you would expect Italy to be very far along on this, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's there. There's, of course, if the rest of the world is Scandinavia, then yes, you're absolutely right.
Or Canada.
And American liberals do like to imagine that the rest of the world is Scandinavia. As far as
I do, yes.
It would be a much better world. But you know what I mean? Like those limited places, it's still only what I came across the statistic not too long ago, but the percentage of the world's population that lives in a jurisdiction where gay marriage is legal is still pretty small.
Oh, sure, yeah. If you include China and India and things like that.
Well, I do include them in the world.
I do. No, I'm glad that you do. I do as well. But yes, no, but in terms of culture, those tend to be kind of like left off the list because it's so much different than.
Sure.
So we tend to, at least kind of think culturally that
we tend
Europe
to think of the
West, and
the rest of the West.
But so the fact that this happened and the United States, like, these shockwaves are probably going to go out through the rest of the world, and even Hillary Clinton said that how a country treats its gay citizens is going to be used as one of the criteria in how the United States defines its relationship to that country.
Oh, wow.
Again, it's just a politician saying that, and she could say it just because it's convenient. But
Did she say that while she was Secretary of State?
Yes, she did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so that shift has happened pretty significantly because remember, it wasn't that many years ago where even the Democratic Party wouldn't touch. This was a hot potato. They weren't even going to talk about it. And now it's like, Obama is saying love is love, and Hillary Clinton is saying like
it's decided. The Democratic Party is like pro-gay.
Yeah, they're doubling down on the gay.
Don't we all though?
Yeah, and a little bit. I think everyone would like to.
I don't really. Okay. All right.
I don't mean to speak for everyone.
All right. Well, continuing with the whole gay thing, there's the what's the jerk's name?
That jerk, duck guy,
the duck guy, the Duck Dynasty guy, Phil Robertson,
who wasn't even famous until a week ago, or
no, he was on Duck Dynasty. He's like the patriarch of the family.
And do you watch this show?
No, I don't watch it, but I knew about the phenomenon. Right?
Oh, okay.
The Duck Dynasty.
Yeah, I learned about the phenomenon just this week.
You didn't even know the show existed?
I didn't even know it existed. I try not to.
What a lucky person you are.
It is really kind of nice to turn the news off a little bit.
I was a little bothered by the existence of
I'm not
by
surprised.
The popularity
I will
of the
say
show.
I'm not surprised of the popularity.
Yeah. Well, my understanding is, again, I will just come out and say it. I have never seen an episode of Duck Dynasty. There. Right?
And do you ever intend to?
I don't plan on it. But from my understanding, what I have been told by people who have watched the series is that the first season was actually interesting because the people who were on the show, they're the creators of this like Duck Call, right?
Oh, right.
That went crazy, made them a ton of money, and then there's like a line of like duck. I can't remember the name of the company, but just kind of duck products.
Duck-based products.
Yeah. And they've made a shit ton of money, and they live down in Louisiana and have more money than a bunch of rednecks should ever be allowed to have. Right.
They're because like Louisiana royalty.
Now they are, yeah. But they have all their toys, and they run around, and they just be rich rednecks, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was a certain fascination with that as like just watching it unfold for the first season.
Sure.
Before they realized that they were celebrities.
Ah, yes.
Right. As soon as they had like observed themselves.
That they have a platform now.
And now they have a platform. That's when it sort of no longer was anything of interest, unless you were, of course, a redneck yourself.
That should be the rule for all reality shows, is just 1 year, one season before they are aware that they are a celebrity.
Yeah. That's when it's interesting, right? Is when people don't know how they look on camera. Mm-hmm. Then they don't know what they sound like.
They don't have a publicist yet.
Yeah. They don't know how they can be edited, right? And as soon as they can start controlling that, then that's when it starts to become less interesting. But anyways, so he came out a couple weeks ago, I guess. I don't like Duck Dynasty. I've never seen it, so I can't. But
Frank,
like,
tisk.
I know,
judging a show without
I've
watching
never seen it. I'm sorry, everyone. But I have no interest in even like going near it. Mm-hmm. And so when the story broke that this guy had said these awful things about gay people and saying that homosexuality is a sin comparable to bestiality, right?
That's what the Mormons... Don't the Mormons? Oh, no, they say it's comparable to alcoholism.
Really?
Being gay?
Oh, I don't... Yeah. But anyways, he... Like, I had no interest in even, like, the story itself. Well, finally an angle popped up where I'm interested. We have... this is the headline on WALB.com. That's Channel 10 in, I'm assuming, Alabama. That's what the ALB stand for, somewhere. But this story comes to us from Valdosta, Georgia. And the headline is, Phil fans push for Chick-fil-A a day. Wait, no. Chick-fil-A day.
A Chick-fil-A a day keeps the gays at bay.
Yeah. But they're pushing for Chick-fil, because he's Phil, whatever his name is.
Oh, that's clever.
Isn't that cute?
That is cute.
Day. It's going to be January 21st And this is the level of absurdity when a story kind of like reaches that I become interested, even if I wasn't interested before.
When it gets a sponsor, a corporate sponsor.
Well, Chick-fil-A technically is not a part of this at all. It's just fans of the show.
Are you sure about that?
Well, it's fans of the show and fans of those chicken sandwiches, which I know people love them. I have never liked those chicken sandwiches. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but
it's because you're gay.
I'm not one of those. Like I know I heard a gay person not too long ago who was from Las Vegas admit that he drives to St. George, which is in Utah, southern Utah, to go to
like
the
an hour away.
Yeah, about an hour from Las Vegas in order to go to the Chick-fil-A there. Because he doesn't want to be seen.
Oh my god!
At a Chick-fil-A where someone could see him.
Oh sure,
right. And but he's going to just run into the other gays who are doing that. But anyways,
but that's kind of like running into your bishop at the liquor store, and you're like,
oh,
yeah.
And he's like, medicinal purposes. Why are you here, brother?
I'm just making a flaming crepe Suzette.
The spirit prompted me to come to the liquor store today. I did not know why.
The spirits
What could I
me.
possibly want here? The spirits prompted me. That's funny. All right. So that's going to be happening. Just want to make sure everybody knows.
Put that on your calendar.
Put that on your calendar. We'll be talking about that a little bit more. Hopefully not, actually, as we get closer to January 21st. So.
So I have a end of year story. That apparently we didn't know of, but it kind of landed on our radar today.
Okay.
Salt Lake City, the heart of Mormonism, is declared 2013's National Bible City.
Really?
Yeah, and
Salt Lake?
Yeah, and
as a Bible city?
Yeah, nowhere near the Bible Belt.
No. So what does this mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'm sure you're wondering, what does that mean?
Is there something? Do we have to do something?
I don't think so.
Are there expectations now?
I thought when I first read the headline, I thought it was we were going to have a conference or a convention.
Yeah, we've had those before.
Yeah, it turns out it's just something we get to bask in. Apparently. So
it's just. Can we put this on the sign?
Yeah, we'll put
welcoming
that on
people to the city,
to
out at the airport.
National Bible City, 2013. So it turns out that a New York-based group has chosen Utah's capital, headquarters of the LDS Church, the Mormons.
Do we still have to say that?
I love saying that. It's my favorite. Just because they hate the word Mormons. They're like,
I thought they've embraced it, but I'm a Mormon.
They have recently embraced it. They realize it's mainly because everyone kept calling them Mormons. So they're like,
the Mormons kept calling themselves Mormons.
We'll call ourselves.
There was never a time in my life when I was Mormon that I didn't call myself a Mormon.
The LDS Church's public relations office, like every press release they sent out never contained Mormonism. It was always the Church of Latter-day Saints, blah, 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 the full-blown name. Yes. Like, they were, like, adamant. This was at least during the 90s and early 2000s. It has to be LDS.
The problem with being called the LDS, right, because that's what they were pushing. We want to just be the LDS.
Yeah, the Latter-day Saints.
The Latter-day Saints.
Well, no one else got it. If the story was being covered outside of Utah, they're like, well, who is that?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, the Mormons. And so it was always in parenthetical, the Mormons.
The Mormons.
Anyway, So anyway, the New York-based group has chosen Utah's capital as its National Bible City of 2013. I suppose there are others. There's probably a list of cities that have been chosen.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The Judeo-Christian Association was established in 1940 to encourage everyone to read the Bible in every sector of society, regardless of religious or political distinction. So even the Muslims, the Jews, everyone.
Everybody should read the Bible.
Yeah.
Everyone.
So, but apparently, to those who question lumping Mormons into that tradition, the group's president, Richard Glickstein.
That's not a real name.
It's probably not. Simply asks, do Mormons read the Bible? then they are part of the tribe.
Oh,
And
isn't
Mormons
that
do.
nice?
They read a version.
Here's a problem that is sort of presupposed in the whole thing. It's this perception that people have outside of Utah that Salt Lake is just a ton of Mormons running around everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
When nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, if you're downtown on General Conference, then yes, there are Mormons running around everywhere.
And they do own most of the important land around here.
The church does, but that doesn't mean that that's who is like in the city.
Right.
Anyways, I just wanted to say that. The Mormons are in the suburbs.
Yeah. Well,
They're
yeah.
not
What was
in the
it?
city.
Have you guys ever
name Sandy the Bible city?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right. Because there's
Orem.
But I mean, they need to be looking. I guess what I'm also trying to get to is that it's not like devoid of Mormons that everybody's just atheist. There are other people here.
Oh, yeah.
That they should be acknowledging that read the Bible. There are tons of Catholics. There's tons of
maybe they're
what
just
have yous.
Desperate. They're running out of cities they can name, and they're like, "Oh, all right, I guess we could do Salt Lake,
Reno or Salt Lake." Let's go with Salt Lake. Okay.
So yeah. He says, I did a little research on the city, talked to people, and reached out to different religious groups. Our trustees made the decision.
Yeah.
So,
well, what makes me sad about this is something that we missed, which was the Interfaith Concert. The National Bible Association sponsored a free concert of praise on November 23rd. That was in the Tabernacle on Temple Square. With it was hosted by I think was she a host? Anyway, she was there. Roma Downey of Touched by an Angel.
oh, I love her.
Yes, isn't she wonderful?
It's
Salt Lake
such a
has
nice
a wonderful connection to Touched by an Angel.
Oh, yes.
It was
It part of our local economy for many years.
It kept our film industry alive.
Yes, it did.
And yeah, so yeah, and because she came out with the miniseries The Bible.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah, she was a part of that. She was in it, and yeah, so she's pro Bible.
The Bible's been good for her, for her career,
and now she's just she's a Bible pusher.
Hey kids, I got a little something for you. It's called the Bible.
All right, and then for my last one, I have this is I love this. This comes to us from Turkey. The nation. It's apparently there are Muslim activists in Turkey who are very very much opposed to any sort of observance of Christmas.
Ooh.
And in particular, they are done with Muslims having anything to do with Christmas. Any kind of oh, it's fun, let's just give some gifts, right? Sort of thing. Our Christian neighbors are doing it. So they've posted what appears to be a billboard. It's at least billboard shaped. But they're distributing this image of a good Muslim man by appearance. He's sort of wearing a button-down shirt and a little white little hat. And he's got a beard, right? Just punching the daylights out of Santa Claus. and the whole billboard has all these messages. I mean, this is because we've complained about American atheists and their
war
billboards.
on Christmas.
Yeah, this is like real war on Christmas.
This is like fisticuffs.
We will be posting this image on our Facebook page, facebook.com/TGIAtheist, because it is absolutely a phenomenal little image. And it's not limited to just Turkey. There's another one another photo that was posted on the same article that purportedly comes from Macedonia, which I guess is Muslim, by and large Muslim, I don't know, where it's the same guy, sort of an Amish-looking fellow. He's actually kind of Amish-looking, but his hat gives it away, right? That he's Muslim. And this guy looks more Amish, like maybe his Amish hat had fallen off. He just kind of has some wispy hair on the top of his head. Same image though, just punching the living daylights. I mean, Santa Claus is taking a beating, and it's pretty fantastic. So next time anybody talks about a war on Christmas in this country, we might just want to redirect their attention.
The so-called war on Christmas.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I kind of love it. So look for that on the Facebook page.
All right. What else did we want to talk about?
Well, I think, did you have the list of things we didn't know before 2013?
So, yeah.
I thought this was nice.
The BBC published a list of, as the medias want to do, they love the lists at the end of the year. But apparently these are things that we as a species and a culture did not know before this year.
And I like this because a lot of it is, there's some scientific discovery on the list, right?
Science.
Yeah. So there's like, science has improved our lives in these 100 ways. And not just science. There's math.
Yeah.
Math was...
Well, this is what
math, I guess, is a science.
It is a science of numbers. And this is, by the way, what specialization has afforded us. You know, when we stopped being a tribal nomadic culture and we settled down, we could finally put our best minds to answer questions such as, how many seagulls would it have taken to lift the giant peach in Roald Dahl's James and the Giant Peach?
Right, yeah.
No one had spent any time figuring this out.
Well, the book...
The
author said 501.
It's because we assumed the author had done his due diligence and done the research.
But the amount of lift that one seagull can create, right? 501 was a little off.
Wouldn't cut it. Yeah, it turns out we would need 2.5 million seagulls.
What?
Yeah,
that's a lot to lift.
Well, that's a big peach. Thus, I guess the name.
The name. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's fair.
Here's one that actually I've long suspected, but I thought it was just, superstitious.
Okay.
Hot drinks taste different according to the cup color.
That's not true. That seems highly unscientific.
It does seem highly untrue, doesn't it?
I mean, like, is it that the seeing the color?
It's probably
sight is somehow
because
coloring.
There's the feeling that you have about something. I mean, of course, like for the longest time, I'm sure we just thought that the taste of something was all that there was, but then we found out like that the aroma is a key component. Like at least 20% of flavors,
if not more.
Yeah. But then I guess they're suggesting that there's evidence that. Well, and any foodie or chef will tell you this, that how you serve the food,
right?
How you present
presentation
is
like if it shows up looking like poop,
right? You're already forming
and by poop I just meant terribly. I didn't actually mean it.
Well, it could be they put the lovely meal, the gourmet meal, and just stuck it in the Cuisinart, and it just came out brown. It's not going to go down that well.
Over well. Yeah, sure.
But yeah,
okay.
So apparently, at least they've suggested that orange cups will make things taste better. In my own house, I have a few mugs, and I do have an orange one that's lovely. My favorite one is the red one.
Really?
I have a green one. It's not my favorite.
That's right over there.
Yeah, that's why it's over there in the corner.
Oh, bad mug.
Yeah.
Especially now that you've read this story.
I know. Now I'm going to think twice about it.
All orange.
Chris.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay.
So,
what other fun tidbits did science give us this year?
Let's see. You brought this up. 2% of Europeans lack the genes for smelly armpits.
I think I might be one of them.
What's your
I'm
heritage?
of European descent. German and English.
That's what I am.
Really?
Yeah.
There's some Dutch thrown in for me too. Yeah. Huh. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Yeah. But I don't really get very pity. Like the only smell that I ever really experience coming from my pits is just it's like body odor, right? Like,
yeah.
it's after days and days and days. It's when I have just started to stink.
Mm-hmm.
And then, my
But
pits
there's not
kinda smell.
but like the pits go first or like
No.
as quickly as possible.
No.
Yeah.
It takes a long time. So that's interesting.
This again, speaking of crazy talk, this sounds crazy, but women look their oldest every Wednesday at 3:30 p.m. Like, what? This is just clickbait right here, right? But this comes from the Telegraph newspaper. Women look their oldest at 3:30 p.m. every Wednesday. A study has found, which of course, who's the study, who funded it.
Clairol.
But, yeah, right. Because that is when energy levels plummet. Well, yeah, duh. Work stress is at a peak.
So this is for a woman who works in an office.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week.
Not self-made authors.
Right.
Not your J.K. Rowling.
No. She doesn't look bad at Wednesday at 3:30.
No. Stress is at a peak, and the effects of any weekend late nights finally kick in. Now, my question is, why just women? Wouldn't men also?
Well, and also it sounds like it's assuming this is for a younger woman who parties a lot.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't buy it.
That one I
who
reject.
funds these things, by the way? I mean, how much money went to that study?
Not enough.
Clearly.
What else?
Let's see. Were there any that?
No, this isn't about me, Chris.
Okay. All right.
I did like the Haribos.
Oh yeah.
Well, how did we not know this about Haribo?
Right.
The gummy, the gummy bear company. Haribo?
Oh yeah.
And
Where was
apparently it's based on the dude's first and last name in the town he grew up in. So his first name is Hans, his last name is like Reese or something like that, and then he's from Bonn, Germany.
Which number was that?
Scroll down until you see the gummy bears. Oh, you passed them. There you go, Chris.
Okay.
Up. Just scroll up. Scroll up.
Okay.
Wait for the gummy bears. Scroll.
There we go.
The guy. There they are.
Okay.
Number 17.
Haribos are so named because of founder Hans Riegel
Okay. Yeah.
and his hometown Bonn.
Yeah.
What?
Crazy, right? Haribo. I didn't know. That's where it came
I
from.
love naming things. Naming is so... It's the history of names.
Yeah. Be a really rough one for me. Be Furfawa. Furfawa. That's the name of my candy company. When I make a gummy confection.
So on the basis of Haribo's name, cloying Jingo's predilection for luridly colored branding and corporate preoccupation with cutesy anthropomorphism, it would be the easiest of mistakes to assume the sweet manufacturer to be Japanese.
Oh, yeah, okay.
But it's not, apparently.
Huh. And we found that out this year. Thank you.
That was never known?
That was not known.
Not known to the public.
Not known to the public, apparently.
Well, this list is
It's a little questionable, but there's more. There's more, Chris.
Yeah.
There's good stuff.
Oh, this one I knew. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Again, if I knew it, then how good is this list? Anyway, the two Steves belonged to a group of hackers and hobbyists called the Homebrew Computer Club.
Oh, wow.
And here's something super, super fascinating that I did not know. But we owe thanks to every single device in our pocket and on our desktop to, this is absolutely true, to a whistle in a Captain Crunch box.
I beg your pardon.
Yes.
How is that possible?
Okay, so this was years ago. Not even too long ago. They were putting, prizes in children's cereal.
They still do, by the way.
They still do, yes.
A Chewbacca pen the other day.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
I had a Marvin the Martian pen from a box of something once upon
okay.
I think I still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no. I mean, of course, everyone's seen the toys.
There it is.
Yeah, it's right over there, it's sitting in my office. So, but apparently, this was in the 70s. There was a whistle that came in a box of Captain Crunch.
Yeah.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Kids, got a hold of it and started blowing it around. But one kid in particular, one Mr. Steve Wozniak, took this whistle and he discovered something curious about that. that when he blew this whistle into a telephone receiver, a live telephone receiver, he could basically send signals that would initiate long-distance telephone calls. Because the whistle made an uncanny sound that was a lot like the dial tones then, the international dialing tones. And he found that some of these signals like bypassed AT&T's own like codes so that he could dial phone numbers without getting charged for them.
That's amazing.
And this sent him off in a wild path of discovery and, quote, hacking that led him to meet up with other people that were fascinated. Right. They were called phone freaks.
Yeah.
And a lot of them got in a lot of trouble over this.
Oh, probably. I can see why.
But they turned, Steve and Steve, they met and they turned legit after not too long. And they
started paying for their phone calls.
Yes. Well, they started doing other things with their interests. And they founded a company.
We should do.
But anyway, I love that story. And it's even, there's a joke, if you remember the movie Spies Like Us with Dan Aykroyd and Chevy Chase. Mm-hmm. There's a scene where one of the, I guess the Pentagon's top code breakers, he's stuck in the basement doing the dirty work of some, brown nosing ladder climber, and but the ladder climber comes down to check on his underling, and he pulls out a box. He's like, he says something about these were unbreakable codes, no one could break them, and Dan Aykroyd's character pulls out he's like, yes, and I found it in a box of Lucky Charms.
Oh,
but it was a reference to the phone freaks of the day.
That's fascinating. Were there any others? Should we call it good?
We could call it good, but it's actually a fun list. Google BBC News 100 Things We Didn't Know Last Year.
Yeah, or just look on our Facebook page during the week, and it'll pop up. That's what we do.
Yeah.
We post things on facebook.com/TGIAtheist. And if you'd like to comment on anything that you've heard on the podcast, you can do it there. Or what was this?
One more.
One more.
Okay. God's bones.
Oh.
Was the sweariest expression in medieval times. And that is something we did not know until this year. So, holy shit, A Brief History of Swearing is the article, and apparently God's bones was the worst thing you could have said during the medieval times.
That's amazing. Well, if you have something awful you'd like to say to us, you can send us an email to podcast@thankgodimatheist.com, or you could leave us a voicemail at 424-666-8442. We're going to listen now to, we're going to take a quick break, and while we do so, we're going to listen to Richard Dawkins not saying a thing, but he's in the video, and he's in the room when Sydney Archbishop George Pell, he's a Roman Catholic cardinal, is on a program in Australia, actually. Well, he's in Sydney. He's from Sydney. But the name of the program is Q&A, and this is a lovely little bit. Richard Dawkins doesn't have to say a thing during this, at least this part of their exchange, because the Archbishop takes care of his own arguments.
And so for some extraordinary reason, God chose the Jews. They weren't intellectually the equal of either the Egyptians or the...
Intellectually?
Morally...
How can you know intellectually?
Because you see the fruits of their civilization. Egypt was the great power for thousands of years before Christianity. Persia was a great power. Chaldea. The poor, the little Jewish people, they were originally shepherds. They were stuck, they're still stuck between these great powers.
That's not a reflection of your intellectual capacity, is it, whether or not you're a shepherd?
Well... no, it's not, but it's a recognition, it is a reflection of your intellectual development. But like many people are very, very clever and not highly intellectual. But my point is...
So can I just interrupt? Are you including Jesus in that, who obviously was Jewish and was of that community?
Exactly.
So intellectually not up to it?
Oh. Well, that's a nice try, Tony. The people...
So that's the voice of the moderator that we hear, other than the Archbishop.
So yeah, Dawkins remains
He remains silent.
He didn't need to say anything.
No. It was never eventually in the clip it does end up going to Dawkins. I can't remember what he ends up saying, but yeah, the remarkable what this man is saying about God's chosen people.
Mm-hmm.
He chose these people, but they were not the brightest.
Wow. Well, they needed help.
They needed
God's help.
Yeah. God works in mysterious ways,
Mm-hmm.
as they say.
If there's anything we've learned from this podcast
through the years. Oh my God, yeah. So anyways, well, we did have some correspondence this week. The first thing that I thought we could go to, well, we have an email that I'd like to read. Where is it? Oh, there it is. This is coming to us from Mark in Calgary. He says, I'm sitting here at a Christmas Eve service with family and playing a game of trying to come up with the 5 most inappropriate Bible readings that they could possibly read. Who says church can't be fun? Love the show. Happy holidays.
Why didn't I think of that? That would have been a perfect game to play with my family.
So I thought we could play a little game.
That sounds wonderful.
A little game. And let's see who could come up with the worst Bible verse between the two of us. Do you have one, Chris?
I did a cursory search on the internet.
Okay.
Found a few fun little forums. Here's one. And I haven't verified these, so of course I'm just assuming it's true because it's on the internet.
Of course it is.
Happy is the one who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks. Psalms 137, verse 9.
Merry Christmas.
And good Christmas to you.
And I came up with Ezekiel 4, 12 through 13. And thou shalt eat it as barley cakes, and thou shalt bake it with dung that cometh out of a man in their sight. And the Lord said, even thus shall the children of Israel eat their defiled bread among the Gentiles, whither I will drive them.
Whoa.
Yeah. Poo bread. In the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
And there are tons of poo
recipes.
Well, yeah, there's other poo eating. There's 2 Kings 18:27. But Rabshakeh said unto them, hath my master sent me to thy master, and to thee to speak these words? Hath he not sent me to the men which sit on the wall, that they may eat their own dung and drink their own piss with you?
Wow.
Yeah, it's nice stuff.
Huh.
So yeah.
Well, here's some more from Ezekiel. Ezekiel's probably some good stuff.
Oh, it's full of such things.
For she doted upon their paramours, whose flesh is as the flesh of asses, and whose issue is like the issue of horses. Or more contemporary translation, she lusted after her lovers, whose genitals were like those of donkeys, and whose emission was like those of horses.
Wow. I prefer the one I can't understand.
I know. It's more poetic. It's more romantic.
Huh. Okay. Well, cool. Well, hopefully, Mark, that helps you out the next time you find yourself in church.
And what a good game.
Read a few of those. That is a good
fun game.
All right. And then we have a voicemail. And I'm just going to play the voicemail because I think he says what it's all about just fine.
Hey guys, this is Brian from Michigan. Just listening to your episode about polygamy, and it kind of got me thinking a little bit about, because you guys also covered some news reports about the federal judge striking down the gay marriage ban in Utah, and I'm starting to think about it a little bit, and I got maybe a little bit of a prediction, and maybe I'm way off base on this, but I would definitely not be surprised if the Mormon Church became totally okay with homosexuality and all that, and I would say probably within 5 to 10 years. Now here's where I'm coming from on it. They kind of dragged their feet with letting black people in for a while. So I'm thinking it'd be very strategic of them to accept gay people, and if they were like one of the first major church, I mean, I know the Episcopalians and a couple other ones, but it'd be a big deal if they switched over. And the Mormons themselves, I mean, they're pretty much primed to accept doctrinal change. So I think that, if it's sort of like, I kind of came to a religion where they always say, yeah, the light gets brighter and we're going to change things. So I think if you're already primed for doctrinal changes, the transition will probably not be as bad as what most people would perceive that it would be. So I don't know, just some thoughts. Maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. Not making an absolute prediction here, but I definitely wouldn't be surprised. All right, have a good one.
Well, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, well, he brings up a couple interesting points. The first one that I kind of stuck in my head is that it would be good for them for PR reasons to be kind of ahead of the story. If this is where history's going, and if they can identify it,
that's a big if.
Because here's the deal: the Mormon Church is a strong believer in PR.
Oh yes,
right?
A strong practitioner.
But their brand of PR is more about damage control rather than getting ahead of issues and ahead of stories. They seem to get PR more in terms of like how to best spin something that has been a problem. Mm-hmm. How to make a change because something is now a problem rather than preventing problems. And so I don't have high hopes that the Mormon Church will actually get ahead of this.
Yeah,
they don't have any historic precedent of ever really getting ahead of.
Well, and they're
these
so
things.
close to being. They're so near to being behind it. I mean,
Right.
the proximity of they're. I mean, they're basically the ones who funded Prop 8 in California. Yeah. So,
and you have to get a bunch of these old men to all agree that it's now time to change.
Right.
And that's the tough part. They're just. I don't see it happening. Maybe on that timetable, but in the long run, I see it
could
happening.
happen faster. I've actually predicted, in conversations with friends, like that it would probably be approximately 10 years after the Supreme Court rules, upholds the 14th Amendment and guarantees equal protection, which would be, twice as fast as the church warming up to black people.
Right. But I mean, that change seems to happen quicker now.
It does. Well, and the church, I think, runs more. They run more like a corporation now than they did 30 or 40 years ago. So I think that, again, like you said, it is mostly motivated by damage control. Mm-hmm. Something that he said that was really interesting is that because the church is, or, maybe the members are so used to doctrinal changes.
Yeah, it's a very interesting
that they
point.
might be more open to that. And they might also just see it as, a lot of the young members are more accepting of this than the old members. In fact, since the church has started softening its position, in the last 10 years, there have been tiny, subtle little softenings of its acceptance of gay members.
Right.
And since that time, I don't know if this is your experience, but like I've seen personally the number of like self-identified gay Mormons grow by truly 1,500%.
Yeah.
Which was unheard of before. If you were gay, you were not Mormon for long.
Right.
And now there's people who...
Well, because just the mere fact that you were gay could get you kicked out of the church.
Yeah. And now they're like, well, we don't know what to do with you, but as long as you don't act on it, you can stay. But I think that, again, I even
heard anecdotally that there are missionaries
in
the field who are open about the fact that they're So these young men who are gay, they're just being celibate.
Well,
I mean, but all
that makes
missionaries have
sense,
to be.
though, right? Yeah, because again, if you're in the church and you're gay, and your bishop is going to ask you to maintain your celibacy, but it makes sense. A mission would be the perfect prescription. Like, go on a
Except
mission.
for the fact, I'm sorry.
Well, right. I know the comedy of it. Like, go live with another man for 24 hours a day. And
at sort of his physical peak.
yes. But, I mean, this is how they think. They're like, well, a mission will solve that. It'll bring you closer to God, and it'll bring you, further away from these temptations.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I personally see a bizarro alternate reality universe where the Mormon Church in 10 or so years just fully comes around to the gay issue, and
By fully comes around, what do you mean though? Like, do you mean like temple?
I mean, like, come
marriages.
make an eternal gay family with us and give us 10% of your income. Gross.
And adopt a child through LDS Family Services.
Yes, yeah.
Adopt this teenage mother's, this unwed mother's child, and give it a good home.
I don't know how it's going to happen. I mean,
It
it's going
seems
to
like
strike
the Lord's plan.
It will. Yeah, I mean, when that happens, it will have been his plan all along. Again,
It just took us a while to figure it out.
well, we can't comprehend it, I
The
mean, who are
Lord's
we
ways
to question the Lord?
Are
Yeah.
higher ways.
Yeah. But Frank, I will say this. Who would have predicted gay marriage in Utah in the year 2013?
Well, what I would not have predicted, and what still would have been a very long ways away, would have been the people of Utah making this change. That it being law that rose up, that this was actual legal change happening from within.
Right.
That I never would have predicted in my lifetime, I don't think. Like I just don't see it as being part of. I mean, I don't know. Maybe as the rest of the country moved, and like we've said, maybe in 10 years the LDS Church makes some big change. Then okay, things start to change in Utah, because we have to remember this was a federal judge making a decision based on federal law.
And constitutionality.
Exactly.
In other words, doing his job.
Doing his job. Absolutely. I mean, people are, the governor called him an activist.
Of course.
Judge.
And
or
you
whatever.
could call the governor an activist governor
Well, I
for
hope he's
trying to
active.
go around the
I
judge.
hope these people are actually doing something. So if he's active, I'm fine with it. But no, he's, yeah, I mean, that's something that I do think we need to remember, that the importance of this isn't that it was Utah. It's that it's the first state that the Supreme Court's striking down of DOMA and that decision. It's the application of that decision that happened earlier this year. That's what this is. That's why it's so big and so important.
Right. And it just happens
so
to be
happened
in
that it
Utah.
was Utah.
Right.
It just so happened that we have a very well organized gay community, and there are financial backers of this community who are very wealthy people who've been able to really push this and keep it organized. And I mean, we've got great gay community organizations in this town.
And they wanted to get married.
And these people wanted to get married, and so there were the resources and the push and the political will here locally to push it. And so that's why it happened in Utah. It's just that the community's organized, and it was the first one. Well, and so the toppling that we're going to see, it's not going to be because the people have changed so much. It's going to be because the law is being enforced.
Right.
The
Absolutely.
Constitution of the United States is being enforced in each of these states.
The law of the land.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting idea, and that is that, at least in terms of the church's relationship to black people, who they came out recently, and just to clarify, we never thought that they were cursed. I don't know where these rumors got started.
Retroactive.
Yes, indeed.
Retroactively, we never believed it.
Right.
Did you believe it? No, I never believed it.
I never believed it.
Well, then, okay, then. We never believed it.
So, but in terms of the church's relationship to black people, here's an interesting thing, and a lot of there's a lot of good legal, precedent to make the case between, like things like interracial marriage and gay marriage and so on and so forth. But in terms of the church's relationship, in 1970 and 1960, there weren't a lot of black people who wanted to convert to be Mormonism. And let's be clear, they would have to be converts. Were not. There was no black families. There might have been one, and I'm sure it's the subject of a movie of the week. But there might have been one black family who crossed the plains and settled in the Utah Valley, 150 years ago. But in terms of gay people, the Mormons give birth to 5 to 10% gay people every single year.
Yeah. Just like everybody. And they have a lot more kids.
Yeah.
Than everybody.
And there's the higher chance that one of their kids will be gay. If you have 10 children, one of them's gay.
Oh, 2 of them. Most cases of those big Mormon families where you got 1, you got 2.
And
I
it's
know
in the
so
extended
many of them.
family,
Yeah.
like a cousin or a nephew or somebody. In any family, there's a handful of gay people.
That's why the people of Utah will eventually,
exactly,
their attitudes will topple to be supportive of gay rights and gay people in general.
And when you look at the,
accepting.
So if I'm a kid and I'm living in some, rural Utah county and my, everywhere I look is just crushing oppressive Mormonism.
Right.
But I see these, warming signs, and gay marriage is now legal in the state. And, maybe the Supreme Court in a year or 10 will vote, like this is the law of the land. And so now, and also the internet, like I'm not really isolated. I can find like-minded people around me or, in other states. And so more and more, just like I said, just a personal observation.
Right.
The percentage of gay Mormons, self-identified gay Mormons, have grown to 1,500%. I think that's going to make this transition happen much more quickly. And also just because, like you said, things change more rapidly these days. So I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the decade, I don't know quite what it will be, but I guarantee you we'll look back and we can do another podcast and say, look, this actually happened. I guarantee you something wacky will change with both, the Mormon Church's official stance on gays and also culturally,
Well, maybe Thomas S. Monson will come out of the closet.
Yes,
because
wouldn't that be great?
He always struck me a little queer.
Well, yeah,
Didn't he to you?
A little fruity. Yeah,
yeah. There's something about him. He's harboring something.
He's harboring dark secrets. A dark passenger.
No.
Wouldn't that be great? One gay apostle.
Yeah. Why not?
Why not? It would
One of them
represent
has to be.
diversity. They'll have the one black one. They'll have the one gay one.
They'll have the one woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Represent all of
The
them.
token representatives. Yeah. Well, who knows? Yeah. So, but just moving on. We should probably move on. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to talk on the phone with Christopher Johnson. He is the author. He's a photographer. It's really what this is. It's a coffee table book called "A Better Life: 100 Atheists Speak Out on Joy and Meaning in a World Without God." So there's Chris's photography throughout the book. He was able to travel the world really and take portraits of atheists.
Wow.
And then they all have a little bit like a good coffee table book, a little photography coffee table book. It's not just the photos. There's also, the text that runs with it. And so it looks like it's going to be a great book. I haven't actually been able to get my hands on one. They're not available to the public yet. But they will be as of the beginning of the year. So this is my conversation with Chris. Thanks so much, Chris, for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me, Frank.
Yeah. Well, maybe you could just let us let our listeners know a little about this book that you've been working on.
Well, it's a hardcover photography book, a coffee table book, called "A Better Life: 100 Atheists Speak Out on Joy and Meaning in a World Without God," and it's a book of 100 atheists, portraits of 100 atheists from around the world, and the different ways that they have joy, meaning, and purpose in their lives.
And this started with Kickstarter. You is that how you kind of funded the project?
Yeah, I funded through Kickstarter, and it was a 2-month fundraising process, and very stressful, obviously, as fundraising is. But yeah, it turned out really well. It was very successful, and raised over the amount that I was looking for, and it turned out really well. Yeah.
Cool. And your press release or your press page talks about how it was one of the largest publication fundraisers ever. I mean, that really speaks to a high demand for something like this.
Yeah, when we were funded, it was the second highest grossing publishing project at that time that Kickstarter had ever done. That's
remarkable. Wow, that's really cool. And so then so you get the funding, and then you go out to take the photos, and you end up. The book contains names that everybody's going to recognize, right? Like Richard Dawkins, Dan Dennett, Penn and Teller, Julia Sweeney, Darren Brown. But you ended up talking to just regular folk as well. I'm kind of curious about the criteria that you set for including people. Like what was your goal like with that?
My goal was to show the atheist community as being as diverse as possible. I wanted to show that we're not just kind of older white men, college professors.
Right.
And they're great, but that's often what people think about when they think of atheists. And I wanted to make people think of more of a diverse group of people. We're not just college professors. We're doctors. We're musicians. We're airline pilots. All kinds of different things. And so I really wanted to show a diverse group of people, so that when people think of atheists, not only do they not think of us kind of just being this marginalized, angry group of people, but that we also have, in addition, experiences which give us joy, the things that give us joy, and those things that we have that are important to us, because I think that's often not shown. I think the anger is important, definitely. The issues that are affecting atheists today, the civil rights issues that affect atheists, are important to talk about, and rightfully get people upset. And I think that's okay. I think that's fine. I get upset about these things too. Right. But in addition, I think we also need to show the other sides of us, so people don't think of us as just being sort of single-faceted. Do you know what I mean?
Right. No, I totally do. And that's something that Dan and I try to do with the podcast, is we try to be friendly and funny and just trying to be a different than people might expect. But like you said, we get angry, we get upset, and but I think that that's a good thing as well, that ultimately that pushes you to action, right? I think like anger seems to be the underlying theme of my civic involvement, actually, when I think about gay rights or atheism and promoting atheism. It's really about that first moment, and then you have to figure out how to put a face on it.
Yeah. I think Greta Christina did a really great job with why are you atheists so angry? With her book.
We had her on the show talking about it.
Oh, great. She's in my book as well. And I think she talks about these issues in a way that I think is more understandable for people, to show that anger is not necessarily a bad thing, and it can be a good thing.
Right.
And I'm kind of taking that a step further in a way and saying, yes, the anger is important, and you're right, that's what motivates us many times. The injustices and the civil rights issues and things like that. And we should embrace that. And I don't think we should shy away from it. I'm not advocating for any kind of positive thinking movement or any let's all just be happy all the time.
A little too
kumbaya. That's not what this book is. Right. That's not what this book is trying to be. To show that we're all happy all the time. I mean, life is difficult. Life is often difficult for people, for many people, for all of us. And we should talk about that. But I think we should also talk about the things that are important to us, things that make us happy. So we should talk about everything.
Right.
And so I think talking about the beautiful things, talking about the wonderful things, is also important. And so that's why I wanted to do a project like this.
Right. Well, who's the target audience for the book? I mean, I would assume that the support on Kickstarter probably came largely from the atheist community. But where do you hope this book winds up, I guess?
On every single coffee table in America.
Well, okay. That's a lofty goal.
Yeah, just something small like that. That's a really good question about target audience, because you're right. I think many of the people on Kickstarter were atheists, or people who identify with the secular movement. But there are religious people who appreciate a project like this as well, and embrace it and think it's a well-needed thing right now.
Do you have any examples of supporters who are Christian or religious that have purchased a copy of the book?
Yeah, I mean, I have friends of mine who are religious who are very excited about this project, who have bought copies already, and probably not just because I'm involved, but because they think, oh, it's a really cool project. A lot of religious liberals and progressives see this as a civil rights issue. You see, oh, there's this group that is often demonized, and here's a project that shows that they're not, eating babies, and that's important,
right,
and that's great. And of course they can have joy in their life and meaning in their life without God.
Yeah.
That's so the liberals and the progressives are saying that. I think that's important.
That's awesome. Well, you traveled far and wide, I guess you could say, to collect all these photos. Tell us some of the places that you went and some of the people the kinds of different people that you met in those sort of far off places.
Yeah, I mean, I really went all the way from my own backyard to, across the world. There are far more places I would have liked to go, but I was so happy to go the places I did. Everything from Yosemite National Park in California and swimming in San Francisco Bay, to the English countryside, to Ireland, Germany, and kind of everywhere in between in the United States. Madison, Wisconsin, St. Paul, Minnesota, Chicago, down in Texas, down in Austin, seeing much of the country and seeing the country parts that you wouldn't think have a vibrant atheist community. Austin, for example, has a fantastic atheist community.
Oh, yeah.
They have the Atheist Experience TV shows down there, and just a wonderful group of people committed to, showing how great the lives of atheists can be. So I spent about 2 weeks in Austin, which is a great town. Wow,
well, that's cool. So in the book, it's a coffee table book, so it's about the photographs, but often overlooked in a coffee table book is the copy that accompanies the photographs. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because the samples that I was able to read, they're in the first person, so they're coming from the person who was photographed, and I'm wondering how did you have a set prompt, or how did you guide people to write about the topics that they chose?
Well, in some cases, the written copy is written by the person. In other cases, it's a transcription from my interview with them.
Oh, okay.
So it's selected pieces from the interview taken and put together, and then I send it to them to edit and add things or take things away. So it depends on the person. But really, I mean, my goal is to try to make each one as different as possible and to talk about something specific related to them, which was important. So, and it wasn't, I didn't really want to make it the place for theological arguments or, arguments against why they're, against the existence of God or anything like that.
Right.
I really wanted people to talk about, what's important to them. And I was really happy with how things turned out through the interviews and through the written submissions that people provided. They were really unique and interesting, and talking about everything from, saving people's lives to the beauty of kaleidoscopes to, walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain, which is a religious pilgrimage, all kinds of different things. And I think having diversity like that is really important. And also hopefully interesting for people too. They can sit and look at this and kind of thumb through and read different pieces. It's supposed to be light, it's supposed to be interesting, it's supposed to be entertaining, and hopefully, and I think it is. And I've spent years of my life with this, so if I think it is, hopefully other people will too.
Oh, cool. Well, let's turn the table on you. Like, what brings you joy as an atheist?
Everybody asks me that question now. I don't really necessarily have a set answer on that one. Relationships are very important to me. My family, my friends, people that I've known in my life. Art. I mean, just doing a project like this, meeting all these interesting people, learning about their lives, being welcomed into their homes, into their offices, into a place that's important to them is really special to me. And I really enjoyed the privilege of having those experiences and, having people invite me to get to know them. Most of these people I'd never met before in my life, and simply either emailed out of the blue or called out of the blue and said, I'm doing this project, would you like to be involved? And, they said, this sounds amazing. And, so having people be really excited about something and validate what I'm trying to do is an incredible feeling for me. Especially, I would say, people who I had admired for years, people who I had read their books or seen them give lectures and thought, wow, those are some really great ideas.
Uh-huh.
And then to have them say, wow, this is a really great idea, really means a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with how everything came together.
Yeah. Well, it seems like a great chance to meet people on that kind of list, isn't it? Hey, I'm doing this book. Richard Dawkins, will you be involved? It seems like a great excuse to meet someone. Well, all right. Well, how can people buy a copy of the book if they're interested?
Sure. People can buy the book by going to theatheistbook.com. I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/theatheistbook. And the book is going to be released on January 1st. I'm just getting a shipment in today, actually. And so it should be out on the 1st. And so you can pre-order right now and make sure you can get your copy today. Awesome.
Well, cool. Thanks so much, Chris, for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Frank, for having me.
So anyways, that was the little conversation.
Excellent.
Yeah. It was a nice little chat to chat with him. He seems like a good guy who's really trying to make some good change for atheists in general. Well, Chris, I think that's our show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Oh. And if you'd like to join the conversation this week, dear listener, you can do so by going to facebook.com/TGIAtheist and liking us. Or you can email us at podcast@thankgodimatheist.com. Or you can leave us a voicemail at 424-666-8442. We didn't get to thanking donors this week. We'll do that when Dan gets back. I don't even know where to look to find that information, I have to say. So
in PayPal. The
it's
papacy's most loved and loved way to pay.
It's somewhere in PayPal, which of course I have access to, but I've never really gotten too involved in that. So we'll just wait till next week. So if there were donations this week, thank you, and we'll thank you by name next week. And also, as always, we do like to thank the Red Rock Hot Club for letting us use their music at the beginning and end of the show. And, of course, we have to always extend a big thank you to Mackenzie, who tends Facebook for us. So thank you, Mackenzie. So, all right. Well, thanks a lot for listening, and have a good week.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.